Hey up lads and lasses, Damfire here, back again with some more Infinite Lagrange. So, today we're going to have a look at upgrades and that kind of stuff, but what I'm going to try and do is teach you how to upgrade based on the role of the ship, so you can go around and apply this to any of the ships that you currently run, figuring out which role they are, then applying the upgrades correctly to get the most out of the ships in their positions. So, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And without further ado, we will move over to the ship screen. So we are back, we are in the ship blueprint screen, and we're going to jump into, I'm going to look at some of the basic ships that everybody has, or are quite common. So I won't be talking about battle cruisers for the time being as well, and that's due to the fact that they've got a special upgrade system that's different to the rest to an extent. And I will be doing a video hopefully covering each of the battle cruisers in their own video and their strengths and weaknesses. So we'll start off with the CAS. You get this in the starter box that the game gives you at the very start of the game. You can unlock this very quickly, very easily. Now the CAS's main role is as a tank. So if we look at the combat roles, it's got front row ship, it's good against other ships, and it's torpedoes. But the most important thing is because it's on the front row, it's more likely to get targeted than cruisers and anything behind it. So specific weapons do target specific ship types. So you do need to try and keep a balanced fleet if that is what you're going to do, or keep a defensive fleet and an attack fleet as separate fleets. Either way, the CAS front row, it's going to get priorityed by anything that has anti-cruiser. So for that reason, I recommend that you concentrate on its armor systems first. Grabbing the increased physical resistance, this increases the base armor stat. The base armor, I've mentioned this before, it's a flat damage reduction. So at the moment, my CAS is ignoring 110 damage of most ships that come in. So if they do below 110 damage, or 110 and below, they'll only do 10% of their damage to me. Anything above that gets a bit more damage through, but at the minimum, they can only do 10% damage. This is really important stat for the CAS because a lot of enemy ships, especially things like WingtoStars, which are pretty common and that kind of thing, have a massive alpha damage forward facing weapon, like the bow cannon on the WingtoStar. So grabbing this, literally just like flat 110 damage, knocked off their damage coming into you. So really, really important. Also recommend trying to grab the armor energy coating, the extra 10%. There's an extra 20% available, giving you a 30% energy reduction. This is a percent reduction, so it's, say they're doing, 100 damage with energy weapons. This is going to reduce that damage by 30%, giving you a flat, well, in this case, a 30% damage reduction. So they'll only be dealing 70 damage to you. So these are very important stats I find on the CAS. If you do come into a situation where you know the enemy fleet doesn't use any energy weapons at all, feel free to respec. If you click this button here, just next to my head, you can reset all current enhanced items. This is completely free. You just get all your points back. And yeah, just reset, remove the energy resistance, add to the increased ship HP, and you'll be good to go against specifically fleets that deal only projectile damage or kinetic damage, and vice versa. You can do the same for energy, increasing the ship health, dropping the armor if you're against fleets that only deal energy damage. This is a nice mix, and it's a little bit more lazy. This means I just don't need to switch it It's not as optimal in this situation, but it's a bit more jack of all trades. Now, after that, the main weapon system I find is the heavy torpedo launcher on the Cass. I recommend trying to upgrade this next. This is because it has 420 damage per hit, whereas if you compare that to the main artillery anti-ship cannons, which only do 300 damage per hit. So the heavy torpedo launching system, it's a slightly lower rate of fire on it, so it's not going to deal with smaller ships as well. But if we look in the information, we know it's attacking carriers, battle cruisers, and cruisers primarily, which means this damage per hit is going to be very, very useful, and it's definitely the way you want to go. So increasing the amount of damage it does, the flat damage, is going to be very important, but making sure you get the cooldown is going to be more so. This will actually increase the damage per second or damage per minute of the ship vastly more than just increasing the flat damage. Increasing its flat damage is also going to be useful, and this is what I recommend next, is the increase all missile torpedo damage by 10%. This is due to the fact that, again, because of how armor works, having a flat increased damage on the alpha is going to give you a more overall damage increase against armored targets. So that's the Cass. This is a tank sort of role. So if you have a ship that fills that frontline tank sort of role, this is the recommended way I would do it, and that is upgrade the armor first, then move on to the weapons when you've got spare tech points and as you increase its level. We'll then look at a slightly more damaging ship and how we're going to go about that. We're going to look at the WingtoStar. This is quite a common ship due to the fact that you got a 50% chance from the larger 799 box for it to drop, so you got a better chance of grabbing hold of it. So this is primarily, it sits in the middle row. It's great against ships, and it has an overall firepower. This is its roles state that it's pretty much more of a damage oriented ship, and that puts it into a situation where you just want to try and get as much possible damage out of this thing as fast as possible. To do so, its main weapon system, in my opinion, is not the missile system, it's this cannon system. This is due to the fact that, again, this has got some upgrades on it, but it's 480 damage shot from this railgun. So this is a massive amount of damage potential, and this is what you should be concentrating on, because again, with armor and the way that works, having a higher alpha damage is going to be very useful to you, and obviously increasing the cooldown to try and get this thing firing as often as possible is what you want to be doing here. This is going to target destroyers and frigates first. With this kind of alpha damage, it's going to be dealing a lot of damage. If your WingtoStar all primary onto single targets, especially frigates, you can almost completely alpha strike them in just one volley and they're out, which reduces their overall either damage or tank, allowing you to just get more and more damage out and reduce the amount of damage coming in towards you. That being said, I recommend trying to grab the damage and then the cooldown on this one. You can go cooldown first, that will increase your damage per minute, but bear in mind that as soon as you start seeing armored targets, you're going to have a damage reduction at that point, and at that point, the increased 10% damage is going to be more useful to you. So bear that in mind, that you do want to try and get the damage up. Probably before the cooldown. If you are earlier in the game, grab the cooldown first, because there's not much armored and not many cruisers going to be coming at you earlier on. I have had a question whether you should be building destroyers when you've unlocked cruisers. The answer is is if you've got top tier cruisers, you have IOs to sit in your damage line as opposed to having to rely on like WingtoSars. You can transition to full cruiser fleets. It is worth doing because they have a higher base armor, higher base HP, so they will stick around longer, allowing them to apply their damage for longer. In most cases though, you won't have enough cruisers to just fill up a cruiser fleet. And in that situation, I do recommend building destroyers and even frigates to apply as much damage as possible. The Storm missile system is also not too bad. As you can see, it's got a much lower alpha damage than the front bow cannon on the WingtoStar. So my recommendation for this is to go for cooldown first, because this weapon system is catered more towards hitting smaller ships which have lower armor, destroyers, frigates, corvettes and fighters. In some cases, some of them have 0 armor, so having the ability to hit them as often as possible is going to be very, very useful for you. So in this situation, I do recommend trying to grab the decreased cooldown. Decreases weapon system cooldown by 15%. There's 2 of those, so you can get 30% reduction on here. And then either you can move into higher damage, so it can deal some damage to cruisers and above. Like I said, if my cruise is blocking 110 damage, these missiles doing 168 damage are really not hitting that hard. Even with the plus 50 I have here, this is only going to be hitting for about an extra 100 damage, or only 100 damage flat. So compared to the damage that's going to be dished out by that front cannon doing 300 damage, this is in a not as good a situation. However, do upgrade it. It is worth doing, especially try and grab these lock-on radar enhancements that increase the missile hit rate. This will allow them to help with anti-air a little bit, hitting those corvettes and fighters a little bit more easily, and it's just a better way of doing it, and getting that damage output actually hitting is going to be very important. The third type that we'll look at is the supports. I have got one here somewhere. So ships like the Guardian. Now, these are a little bit odd, as trying to get your Guardians to stick around for as long as possible is probably the most important aspect. So fitting them similar to tanks, but they do come with special systems that can help with that. For example, we have here the emergency repairs. When the ship HP falls to 20%, all onboard UAVs perform self-repair for 40 seconds, and this effect only triggers once. That one time, though, is enough for you to try and get your Guardian back up to a decent amount of HP. It also acts as a tank in this situation, and a lot of ships retarget when they drop below that 20%, so it's quite likely that after they target this Guardian, got it to 20%, they've retargeted it to another ship, allowing this ship to heal itself, bring itself back up to a decent amount of HP, so if they start targeting it again, it's not going to just instantly die, allowing this to get more reps out onto your other ships, healing them up. So that is going to be very important. After that, I recommend the armor systems, obviously increasing the ship's HP in this situation and increasing its physical resistances as soon as possible. This is a destroyer, so increasing its ship's HP is worth more if you're going against higher alpha damage ships like winged hussars. This is due to the fact that at 20 armor and it can get plus 16, puts it at 36 flat damage reduction, which, as you can imagine, against a 440 damage winged hussar like the one I just showed you, it's not going to do as much as having the increased HP at that point. Something to note as well, it is worth trying to grab some of the cruising speeds on here. It does help it move around a little bit easier. I believe the situational awareness is very useful though. This reduces the chance of being hit by missiles and direct fire weapons. These are, you can kind of imagine them like a dodge chance, so they add like a 15% chance to dodge enemy weapons and stuff like that. Again, further increasing survivability. Now, the Guardian does have a fairly okay missile system. I have whacked some points into here. I actually don't recommend doing this. The only reason I've done this is because it is in my damage fleet. I do run 2 separate fleets. One's defensive and one's a damage fleet. I run the damage fleet in first, so that's tanking all the damage. So my attack fleet is relatively safe. I do have these Guardians, and just in case they do actually accidentally aggro something, so they do have some survivability in my very fragile DPS style fleet. Now, for Corvettes, they give you the CV11 first. I recommend not building them whatsoever, so we'll ignore that one. But if you do get something like the Nebula Chaser or even the Red Beast, these type of ships, I recommend just going straight in onto their weapon systems. It's not the Nebula Chaser, is it? Yeah, no, it is the Nebula Chaser. That is the pulse cannon, isn't it? Yeah. So I have the pulse cannon variant here. So energy weapons, because it's a percentage damage reduction, do have, well, when they're shooting and hitting something, it's a percentage damage reduction against them. Does mean that increasing the amount of damage they do is not as useful as increasing its rate of fire. So again, for energy style ships, we're looking at decreasing the weapon system cooldown as much as possible before increasing their damage output by giving the damage increases, the 10% increases within the upgrades. So also note that weak point detection, crit damage by 40%, increases the amount of damage when it crits by 40%. What I've confirmed from the devs so far is that crit damage is damage that's applied directly to a system. So if we look at this ship, for example, and we have a look at the propulsion system, these can get damaged and blown up, and this gives reduced effectiveness. And in some cases, I've seen ships just pop. This could be because of a critical system just being destroyed, and that means the ship's no longer able to do anything, so it just dies. On faster ships, similar to the Corvettes and the fighters, it's definitely worth checking the propulsion systems because they give reduced selection times. This means it's got reduced time to retarget another ship while it's out and flying about. So make sure you grab that. Because we are now talking about Corvettes and that sort of thing, I do want to talk about the AC-721. And specifically the aircraft system. This is due to the fact that it has the Corvette maintenance system. These all revolve very similarly around where they have these increasing the lock-on speed of aircrafts and the hangars and that kind of thing. This allows your Corvettes and stuff to release faster, allowing them to apply their damage a little bit quicker. Something also to note here is RTB is return to base. That means when a Corvette needs to resupply as they run out of ammo or that kind of thing, they will come back to the carrier. So in this case, an AC-721 dock, and then it takes time for it to resupply before it can be relaunched. So note on this then that reducing the RTB cooldown is basically like reducing the cooldown of the weapon system. It works very similarly. So these are something that you should be trying to aim for, to try and grab hold of, is these rearmament accelerations, reducing the cooldowns before increasing the damage of the UAVs again off these systems. So another thing to note just quickly is tech points are what you use to spend on these upgrades. You get tech points by grabbing levels. Levels are soft capped at 30, so that means you can go to level 30 on a ship by killing NPCs. After level 30, you have to deal with PvP to be able to upgrade your ships, which isn't too useful, unfortunately. There are some ways around it, like you can make an alt account, for example. I don't know how legitimate that is, and then just fly your ships into your alt account fleet to try and get the XP for it. Again, obviously, if you're at wars and stuff like that, you will naturally just get XP from participating in them. The other way of getting tech points is from the boxes. You'll see often that when you're unlocking a box, you'll have the ability to upgrade or give tech points to certain types. So it'll be like tech points for destroyers, and when you select that, it will ask you to place a destroyer in. In this kind of situation, either choose your highest damage output ship, make sure you can get as many points as possible onto that so you can fully max it out. After that, then maybe look at your tanks and that kind of stuff, or if you only have tanks in that slot, make sure you get the ship that you're going to use the most within that situation. So I hope you found this useful and gives you an understanding and an idea on the roles of ships and how you should be upgrading them. So just a quick recap: for tank type ships, ones that are going to be on the front line and tanking for your other ships, you want to be looking at their armor and energy resistance first, and potentially HP if they have the slots for it, or refitting energy to the HP if you're against projectile ships, and vice versa for energy ships. For damaging ships, you want to be looking at what is their highest alpha damage weapon first, maxing that one out, and then working on its secondary weapon system afterwards. For support ships, look at special upgrades on them, giving you bonuses to repairing themselves and that kind of thing, or emergency repairing ships at low HP. Then looking at armor to increase their survivability, because keeping them on the field for longer is going to be more important, because that allows them to repair for a longer time. And then looking at damage if you have leftover points. Corvettes and fighters, look at increasing their weapons first, and then increasing their special systems if they have them, and then increasing their ability to dodge missiles and anti-fire. And for carriers and that kind of thing, look at decreasing their lock-on time, so you can get your Corvettes out faster into the fight, so they can get the damage out quicker and earlier. Then reducing the cooldown on redocks on the RTB is going to be detrimental to increasing your Corvette's damage. And then looking at damage overall for them, and potentially looking at armor after that to increase the survivability of the carrier, so you don't just lose your carrier and however many Corvettes or fighters are attached to it, because if a carrier dies, you lose all of the squads attached to it. Energy ships, look at increasing the damage first, the cooldown first. You want to try and decrease cooldown and then work on increasing the damage. Things like IOs that have special strategies like the overdrives, do look into them. They are quite ridiculously powerful and increase a ship's damage output massively. But again, the most important thing for energy weapons is cooldown and then damage. Thank you guys for watching. I will be covering battle cruisers in separate video, because they do have a ridiculously different, well, not ridiculously different upgrade system, because you have the different slots. Like, for example, you have these heavy defenses, armor systems, and integrated projectile systems on this ST-59 as an example. But we will delve into this a little bit more differently, because the battle cruisers are very customizable. They can fill a variety of roles, so I'll show you how to build them for specific roles, and that way you can apply it to which ships you have. So again, thank you guys for watching. I hope you have enjoyed the video and you found it informational and useful to you. And don't forget to hit like, comment, and subscribe. It does help me out, helps the channel out. And I'll catch you guys next time.